Is Abdullah Khalifa Metef. I am senior researcher at the Department of Strategic Research at Trends Research and Advisory. On behalf of Dr. Mohammed Abdullah Al Ali, Executive Director of Trends Research and Advisory, I would like to welcome you at this e-lecture, which is very important. And especially, I would like to welcome our speaker today, Dr. Mohamed Khurshid, advisor of the Austrian government and a full-time professor of Islamic Studies at Munster University in Germany and director of Documentation Center of Political Islam in Austria. Welcome. We are going to tackle in this lecture the new European approach to Muslim Brotherhood with examples of Austria and Germany. And we will hear from Dr. Khurshid about the latest development with his academic perspective as someone who is specialized and will give us some insights about this very important and concerning subject at the level of peace and security worldwide. It's very important here to shed light on a study that was published in April by its Trends Research and Advisory entitled Tools of Political Islam Group and the Tools to Achieve Their Goals and Projects in Europe. In this study, light was shed on Muslim Brotherhood group in particular, and it mentioned how this group is infiltrating the European society through cultural center and religious and civil organization, taking advantage of the freedom space and democratic environment to pass the political and security agenda. Now, I would like to give the floor to Dr. Wael Saleh, senior researcher at Trends Center, to moderate this lecture. Thank you very much, my brother Abdullah. Thank you, the followers. I would like to thank you on behalf of Dr. Mohammed Al Ali, Executive Director of Trends Research and Advisory. Today we have Dr. Mohammed Khurshid, our speaker. He is advisor to the Austrian government, and he is a full-time professor of Islamic Studies at Munster of Germany and director of Documentation Center of Political Islam, and also he is the head of the consulting committee of documenting Islam affiliated to the Ministry of Integration in Austria, and is also a member of the consulting committee for research on political Islam affiliated to the German embassy. The interest of Dr. Mohamed Khurshid focus on, besides political Islam, on the subject of renewing the religious discourse. He has many research published in German and English. The lecture of Dr. Mohamed Khurshid for today is the new European approach towards Muslim Brotherhood, with Austria and Germany as two examples. Before giving the floor to Dr. Mohamed Khurshid, allow me to start with the conclusion of a study published by Trends Research and Advisory in the 4th of this month. It was entitled Danger of Muslim Brotherhood in Europe, Strategy of Infiltration, Tools of Funding and Countermeasures. It's a study in which I published with Drs. Fatou Haikal, Ashraf Al-Aisawi, Khalid Abdelhamid. At the conclusion, I quote in that study, there is no doubt that Muslim Brotherhood poses a danger to Europe and the rest of the world at all levels, be it political, intellectual, economic, or security. It seeks to build a country that will be cross-national, that will have an aura of secrecy and the name of Islamist Khilafah. And it's taking advantage of different strategies to infiltrate societies and using ideologies that are cross-national, that do not respect sovereignty of countries and do not recognize cultural, social, or civilizational peculiarities of countries. And this is the reason why there is a growing concern in Europe towards this group. End of the quote. In this context, it seems today that we are witnessing an important shift towards the religious approach in the heart of Muslim Brotherhood, especially in Europe, in Austria, Germany, and France, due to the increasing phenomenon of extremism in the name of Islam. And this poses a danger to peace and social cohesion. In July 2020, Austria announced the establishment of a documentation center affiliated to the Ministry of Integration to disclose ideologies and networking strategies of Islamist groups. And Germany took similar steps and established a consulting committee affiliated to the Ministry of Interior to research political Islam and disintegrate it. And that was in June of this year. And that was thanks to our guest today. So we have no better person than Dr. Mohanad Khurshid to analyze the development related to the new European approach to Muslim Brotherhood, especially Austria and Germany, to analyze the reactions that followed, and also some sympathy that emerged from public and cultural figures in Europe. And also, Dr. Mohanad will tackle the importance of cooperation with think tanks and research centers to fight religious extremism. Now I give the floor to Dr. Mohanad. Thank you, Dr. Wael. First of all, I would like to thank TAN's Session Advisory for inviting me, and I would like to thank in particular Dr. Mohammed Al-Ali and Mr. Abdullah Khalifa, and I would like to thank in particular my colleague Dr. Wael Saleh, who got in touch with me, and he's known worldwide, and we benefit a lot from his research and books on political Islam. In my lecture, I'm going to discuss 5 points. The first point will be a historic background about the presence of Muslim in Austria and Germany. And we are focusing here on political Islam in these two countries, Austria and Germany, and historic background on political Islam in these two countries. And the second point, there will be a short overview on the steps taken by Germany and Austria on eliminating the sources of political Islam. The third point will be about the reaction of political Islam group regarding the steps taken by Austria and Germany. The fourth point will be about the problem of sympathy by some left movements in Europe and other currents also with the political Islam. This is a challenge. We'd try to find out the reasons for that and how to overcome it. The last point will be about the future of political Islam and the role of cooperation with the Islam, with the research center to eliminate the sources of political Islam and the importance of research and cooperation with research centers such as TAN's. So the first point will give you a short historic background. Islam in Austria goes back to the year 1908, when the Empire of Austria, it included the country of Bosnia, added Bosnia, and there was 6,000 Muslims in Bosnia, and they became part of the Austrian Empire, which led to the recognition of Islam as an official religion besides other religions of the Austrian Empire. In 1912, a law was passed known as the Law of Islam. It recognized Islam as an official religion besides other religions that the empire adopted in those days. Accordingly, this law of Islam in 1979, the official authority to represent Muslims was established. It is recognized by the state, and in 1982, teaching Islamic religion was approved in public schools of Austria as a mandatory subject for students unless they submit a letter from their parents to exempt them from that subject. But as I said, the subject of Islam was a part of the public curriculum, and the country was endorsing it. And it was for the authorities who were speaking in the name of Islam. So this was something peculiar to Austria. We have not seen it in other countries, maybe in Belgium, but as I'm saying, this historic background that led to a recognition of Islam in an official way. Regarding the mosques and the associations, Islamic association in Austria as in Germany, most of them are Islamic centers with a Turkish background, because most of the Muslims in Austria and Germany, maybe 60 to 65% of them are of Turkish background. And this is due to the history of the Second World War in the 60s and 70s of the last century, when both countries needed labor to rebuild their countries. So they signed contracts with Turkey, and Germany signed the contracts with the countries from North Africa, especially Morocco. This is why most of the Muslim communities are from Turkey, and for Germany, they are from Morocco. As for Austria, after the Turkish, we have Muslims from Bosnia who came after the war of the 90s. They came not as Muslim, but as laborers who were supposed to leave after a few years. But what happened is that they got integrated in society, and we now have the fourth and fifth generation. So when we talk about the first generation who came in the 60s and 70s as labor in Austria and Germany, the association established in the 70s and 80s of the last century in Austria and Germany, and they are approximately the same Islamic association. Most of them are of Turkish descent. They may be representing the government or the opposition. This is why we have the Ministry of Religion, who is responsible for most of the mosque and the association in Austria and Germany, with a strong political agenda. And this is why Austria and Germany are criticizing, because these centers they carry the name of Islamic centers, but they are guided with the political agenda, especially in the last years when the political Islam in Turkey became strong, and it enhanced the power of political Islam in Germany and Austria. And there is a correlation between those Turkish association and the Association of Political Islam, especially the Muslim Brotherhood Association. When did the Muslim Brotherhood come to Austria and Germany? They came in the 60s of the last century. Not as a labor, but just to escape persecution in Egypt, in Turkey, and to find space in Europe. Europe took advantage of them in that time. And that was during the Cold War against socialism, against the Soviet Union. And the enemy of of the Soviet Union, uh, communism, socialism, the enemies of those movements, they could find in Western Germany or in France, they could find a chance there, but they were used in the war. And those who came from Egypt under Jamal Abdel Nasser, who had connections with the communist movement. So those movements were used to fight the Soviet Union. This is why they found the leeway for movement there. As an example, the German, one of the German prime ministers, Helmut Schmidt, well, received the Muslim Brotherhood officials, well, and Al-Ghanouchi and the others were received in France. They took all because in those days, in the 60s, they were not posing a danger to the citizens in Europe because their focus was on the Arab countries, on achieving their own agenda of establishing the Islamic Khilafah. So Europe took them. The situation changed in the last years, especially with the second and third generation of the Muslim Brotherhood in Austria and Germany. And the focus is not that we want to go back. These networks in Europe, just for them to enhance their roots and to get power in those Arab countries. The situation changed because now there are documented agendas of the Muslim Brotherhood in Europe to establish Islamic states within Europe. The second and third generations, their interest towards Arab states started to dwindle, and even the language relationship and cultural relationship has diminished, and the connection to Europe became higher, and the political agenda more directed towards Europe. And in the last few years, Europe started taking note of that. And this leads me to the second point, which is about the steps taken by Austria and Germany to fight the sources of these groups. As I said, the Muslim Brotherhood in the 60s in Germany and in Austria found a space for movement, and they got help and assistance from some European government. Not in love of the Muslim Brotherhood or a doctrine or agenda, but just to fight communism, especially in the Arab countries. The second important thing is that following September 11 attacks, there's a focus on extremism, and extremism was confined in violence. And the last years, there is more focus about religious violence, extremism, jihadism, Daesh, why tens of thousands of Muslims who were born and were raised in Europe choose to join ISIS. There are lots of studies about that, but this interest in the subject of violence led to a lack of political awareness or a cultural or academic awareness about those Islamic groups who do not carry the slogans of ISIS, of jihadist, of violence. But in those days, they were posing a big danger, not only to Europe, but to humanity in general. In the last years, there's more awareness that there are attempts to infiltrate the state organizations in Germany and in Austria. So Salafists and jihadists, they eject violence, and they showcase the willpower to join society, but at the same time, they try to present themselves. For example, Austria, in the last years, they noticed that there are some Islamist group that they didn't know about their ideologies, but they noticed that there are some groups that use terms such as Islamophobia a lot, and the goal is to show the Austrian society or the European societies in general as societies that hate Muslims. So they started using Islamophobia, and they were focusing on everything that's negative, especially things that come from the extreme right, and they would not present that as part of the extreme right discourse, but as part of the Western discourse, and they, they try to present this negative image to everyone towards Islam and Muslim. So at this time, the Austrian state started to put some question mark, and they reached out to us as scholars, try to know why are they doing this, why are they trying to criminalize the Australian or state on the European states. So awareness started gradually to increase, and the discourse about Islamophobia, it was not just something about sympathy, but there was an ideology that goes against the values of citizens and democracy and equality. And that was behind this group, that there is some organized institutional work, some networks that work in tandem with each other from inside and outside. And there is a Muslim Brotherhood that is officially behind all of this. This is not just question of emotions of some Muslims who feel that they are treated badly, but there is an ideology which is clear. It has attempts and agenda that it's trying to reach through this narrative, the narrative of hostility of the West towards Muslims and Islam. Austria started gradually having awareness about the need not only of intelligence service, but a knowledge to understand this ideology and the strategy of these groups. This group which work behind the curtains, unlike the jihadist group who in Austria or in Germany, who would give themselves jihadist names, and they'll post their videos on Instagram and YouTube and say, we hate you, you are infidel, want to be jihadist against you. But the members of the Muslim Brotherhood, they integrate into society. They say they want to be part of society. They say, we are with you, we espouse your values. But this is the external face. So the state started understanding that there is something behind that face, and they wanted to understand that ideology. So this is why Austria, like Dr. Weil said at the beginning, in July of last year, it was the 14th of July, 14th of July of last year, it was announced that they established a Center of Documentation of Political Islam. It's a scientific center. It's not an intelligence or security-based center. No, it is. It focuses on analyzing the networks and strategies of Muslim Brotherhood and other groups. there was lots of meetings with the Minister of Interior here in Germany to convince him to have a similar institution like that in Germany. I remember that the Minister of Interior, Seehofer, he was telling me that this group ejects violence. He said they are not really extremists. He said that he considered extremists as only those who want to blow bombs somewhere, but they were not showing their agenda. Even the agenda of terrorism, they do not show it, and we managed to raise awareness here in Germany about the danger of this group, and Germany took similar steps to Austria and established, like Dr. Weil said, consulting authority affiliated to the Minister of Interior on the search of political Islam, and that happened in the last month. And these developments were accompanied with the legal changes, especially in Austria, because Austria took many more steps compared to Germany to tighten the noose on these groups. For example, they banned the use of the symbols of Hamas or Hezbollah. They banned the funding, and they started monitoring the funding of these groups, and they banned affiliation to those groups. And the parliament passed this bill, and it just took place a few days ago. And these are positive developments, which take us to the third point. So what are the reactions among society? Reactions of groups of political Islam. In the fourth point, I will talk about reaction among society from the non-Muslim. Regarding the political Islam, these groups, they use strategies which can be manipulative. For example, last year, when the Center of Documenting Political Islam was established, they immediately put a big question mark and tried to convince other politicians from the opposition and the churches that the concept of political Islam is a new concept, is a concept that was established by the Austrian government. It did not exist before, so they tried to mislead the public opinion, and they made the public opinion think that the goal was to prohibit all the Muslim activities and to ban them from participating in any activities as Muslims. So they tried to show the Muslim as victim, as was the case for the Jews during the Second World War. So they're saying, so they were trying to manipulate the emotions and to fake the facts in an attempt to mislead the public opinion. Another step is that they were trying to shape the public opinion when talking about the steps against political Islam, and that it means a war against Muslims and Islam. So they were saying we are victims now, as was the Jews in the Second World War, with this government which is anti-Muslims. So they were manipulating the emotions. As I said, there is also there is Turkish support for that. If we check the Anadolu news agency, what were they saying about this topic? in Austria. They say that there is a war to close down all the mosques in Austria. There is a war against Islam and Muslim in Austria. And Al Jazeera channel was taking the news from another news agency and show it to the viewers. The viewers who do not know the fact believe what they see and think that there is unprecedented hostility in Austria against Islam and the Muslims. And Muslim Brotherhood benefit from that because at the end they want to have a big discord between Muslims and Europe, and they want to show the West as the enemy. This is why they use this narrative in the news or the public discussions from those stakeholders in Turkey or other Arab countries. They all try to help the Muslim Brotherhood and to sow the seeds of discord among them. This is why in Europe, in France, for example, they started realizing the importance of eliminating the sources of funding of these Muslim Brotherhood groups because they understood that this is not just a small group, but it's much more bigger than that. Also, the other thing is that the political Islam groups started changing their methods in the last years, and they reduced the use of religious discourse, using more emotional discourse. For example, the Salafists, when they would condemn the West and consider the Westerners as infidels, in this case, the political Islam, they used different names. They would say the white man, the racism. They don't use a more religious language because deep down they are talking religious language, but to the outside world they are not using that language. This takes us to the fourth point, the lack of sympathy of the non-Muslim with this discourse of victimization from the Muslim Brotherhood in Europe. Who are those who are sympathizing with them? There are different categories. We have in Austria, we have the opposition, the political opposition in Austria, because the party which took the responsibility of fighting extremism is not the extremist right party, and the prime minister, which I know in person, Sebastian, he said whenever he talks about Islam or political Islam, he always say we distinguish between Islam and political Islam. We want to protect Islam and the Muslims from the exploitation of their religion by political Islam. Our war is against an ideology which is hostile to Islam and Muslims and to citizenship and to humanity. It is the ideology of political Islam as embodied by the Muslim Brotherhood. So he always makes that distinction so that nobody would say that he is against Islam. So he says that they want to serve the Muslims, and we will hear this discourse a lot by the Minister of Interior of Austria, the Minister of Integration, the Minister of Interior at Germany. When I talk with them and discuss the importance of distinction between the different categories so that their speeches would not be used as something against Islam, but the opposition, especially now, the opposition in Austria is the communist left party. Anything that the popular party would say, they would go against it, regardless of the view of political Islam, and they would sympathize in a naive way with the Muslim, with the political Islam, not because they are in love with the political Islam, but just to oppose the other party. Another point, there is a group from the left in Europe, which is a stronger team. It sympathizes with political Islam because it finds in Muslims the new proletariat in its quest for new victims of modernism, and many people who have a problem with modernism they sympathize with political Islam, not because they like political Islam, but because political Islam serves the ideology, because they are against modernism. So we have the leftist or many members of the left in Europe, they sympathize with political Islam and support it. And there is another team which supports political Islam, and I apologize for the word. It's kind of naive. Even some representatives of churches, when I sit with them and talk with them, I see that they have no background about these political Islam groups or the agenda, and they sympathize with them, thinking that they are sympathizing with victims of racism, and they say that the extreme right attacks Muslims, so they want to sympathize with them. But this is a shallow perception. So we need to raise awareness of these people and help overcome the challenges that this society is facing. And the last point I would like to tackle, because we are running out of time, in a nutshell, just about the future of political Islam and the importance of cooperation with the external think tanks. Regarding the future of political Islam, to be honest with you, it depends on us. And by us, I mean those who love humanity, those who defend values of humanity, regardless of Islam or not Islam. It depends on us. Are we going to be standby and watching, or will we play a positive role? Why do I say that? Because I noticed that in Austria, in the last 10 years, the Muslim Brotherhood members managed to establish many centers and to move with too much freedom. Now, if we increase the political awareness among the public and say that extremism is not only the extremist is not only, or the jihadist is not only the person who carries a bomb and say I want to kill you, but extremism starts in the minds, in the ideology of hating the other. It starts in ejecting the others and saying that it's only me who should exist and I have my ideology and society should endorse my ideology. This is from where the problem starts, and we need to eliminate the source of funding of those groups. So the question is, when are we going to take steps to raise that awareness? Austria has already started doing that. The second thing is passing laws to tighten the news on political Islam groups. So the more laws we have about that, the more lower the voice will be. Second thing, we need to raise awareness of the Muslims themselves. The Muslims, many of them are driven by emotion when they hear the narratives of victimization. We need to put a line and those narratives because now we are in a globalized world. We are in a small village. We are all brothers and sisters and different religions, Islam, Christianity, Judaism or others, and even regardless of religions, we are brothers and sisters. We believe in one God, or we are also brothers and sisters in humanity, and we have this is our commonality, so that the emotions of Muslim would not be manipulated, and nobody would say that the West always being subject that have nothing to do with our lives in Europe, like the Crusade Wars, occupation, the post-colonialism. We are done with that. We need to open and expand our horizon for a new reality and to live in peace and prosperity, so that the Muslims cannot be manipulated. Another point before I conclude, and this is important to me in my work in Germany at the Higher Institute of Islamic Studies, we have 900 Muslim students, and most of them would be imams at mosques or teachers of Islamic religion at public schools. What we are focusing on here is not criticism, not criticizing the ideologies which are anti-Islam, whether it's jihadist, Salafist, Muslim Brotherhood, or political Islam in general. Of course, it's important to think and criticize those movements, but at the same time, we need to talk about alternatives, because the youth, they say, now we understand these people manipulated the religion. They just want to reach power, and they want to do that in the name of Islam. But what is the other alternative Islam? And this is what we are working on. And this is a completely different subject at Munster University. We have Islam, the religion of mercy, which I to read the Quran from the perspective of mercy and the relationship with the others, etc. So we need to rearrange all these things to find out the alternative. But if we keep just criticizing, we will have a void that will always be filled by others. So we need to find alternative. And the last point, the important topics to us, the subject of cooperation with the scientific institution in Islamic countries, which are aware of the danger of these Islamist groups. As I said, it's not only confined to one country, because Muslim Brotherhood networks, they are beyond one state, and they are not limited to a specific state. And to disintegrate it, we need to understand the strategy, because they always develop their strategies and their discourse. So we need cooperation with others, research centers and think tanks, and I am honored from the center at the Ministry of Interior in Germany, which is also supervised by the Prime Minister, and the Center of Documentation of Political Islam, and the Higher Institute of Islamic Studies, and the Consulting Council here in Germany. We are honored to cooperate with Trends Research and Advisory. We need to exchange expertise you can also come visit us here in Germany or in Austria, and there is a huge presence of other agendas that help political Islam. Their presence is much more stronger than those who want to eliminate the source of funding of political Islam in Germany or in Austria. So this is an invitation to more cooperation. We need cooperation with you, especially academic and scientific cooperation, to understand these strategies and document them and understand how to disintegrate them and how to find alternatives. And sorry for taking too long. Dr. Weil asked me to take only 30 minutes. Now I give the floor back to Dr. Weil. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Mohamed Khurshid. And to answer Assertion Advisor, I would be very pleased to cooperate with you. Thank you very much for this very valuable and insightful lecture. To answer Research has some questions for you. I would like to summarize the questions. First question, can other states like Scandinavian states and the UK follow the steps taken by Germany and Austria? And do the researchers find that this can be helpful to achieve that goal? In the last few months, there was many meetings at the level of Europe. It was closed-door meetings in which participated countries like Sweden, Belgium, France. France is very much interested in that subject. The UK was not there, although there are some political Islam groups in the UK. I know more from that more than one country in Europe. They are watching developments in Austria. Even here in Germany, the Minister of Interior said, now we are thinking loud and they want to have a center to document political Islam. There's one as is the case in Austria, but we are waiting to see how successful it will be. And we will also want to cooperate with this center and with other Arab and Islamist countries. So the eyes now are focused to developments in Austria to watch to what extent can those actions be successful and apply them in other European countries. Now, the European countries are mostly interested, besides Austria and Germany, it's France regarding the development in Austria, and they always want to know the latest that are taking place in these two countries. But as I said, the Center of Documentation of Political Islam is still new, only 1 year now, and with the corona pandemic, we postponed many events, many conferences. But probably after summer we'll move faster. But we hope that other European countries can benefit from this expertise. And there is a dire need for the academia and researchers to open up and to correspond with the politicians who are interested in the topic. Educated people, they should try to raise awareness among the public opinion and the media. And here, I don't want to put the whole onus on the politicians, but also on the academia members. And think tanks are institutions that need funding, they need support, and the other party we are talking about is very much supported, and more than the other party, which is fighting this political Islam groups. Thank you very much. Another question. There is a phenomenon that Terence Research and Advisor started noticing is that some researchers in Europe, in some institutions, are handling the topics linked to political Islam as goods that can be bought and sold, which led to a new style which we can call merchandising knowledge, sympathizing with Islamism. Did you notice that in Austria and Germany or Europe in general? Yes, we noticed that a lot, and this is what I said more than once, that there are some research centers that are supported and they have some hidden agenda from foreign countries. I don't want to mention names of the countries who support them, but there are countries who support them with lots of money. I can give you an example, one example. At Georgetown University, there is what is called the Itch Initiative. They carry the name of Islamophobia, but if you delve into the details and the names of the people they mention, they are against Muslim. For example, for me, I am included there. I'm considered as one of the anti-Islam persons. While I always talk about the positive aspects of Islam and the element of mercy of Islam, however, they put me under the name of Islamophobia. Many Muslims in Europe, if you go to Georgetown each initiative, you will find that lots of Muslims in Europe, their names are included in that list. So it just takes a few days and they will put your name in the Islamophobia list. This is and the person in charge, he has nothing to do with scientific research, but unfortunately, but there are Arab countries that support that initiative. They say that we are fighting political Islam. I'm appalled by that. There is no clear vision. Sometimes we find names and we don't know where's the direction. And so there are some big centers supported with lots of money, which allow many researchers to work day and night and to put political Islam at the forefront. And if we compare that to what is taking place in Europe with the funding of research centers that work against political Islam, unfortunately, we are still lagging behind. And we still need to establish research centers that focus on political Islam. And this is what I hope that many countries do, as and the UAE is one of the first countries in the Arab world and the Islamic countries that realize the danger of this movement. So we hope that there will be more research centers. We're not talking about centers of dawah, but research centers and think tank that will add some value. Thank you very much, Dr. Mohamed, that I am also included in the list of Islamophobia in Canada. So we have the same thing in Canada. knowing that I am Muslim. So thank you very much, and I would like to conclude with my last question. You explained in details the importance of collaboration with think tanks and the exchange of expertise. And here, this begs another question. The methodologies and the tools and concepts available now in the common literature of Islamism, is it sufficient to tackle the development taking place and the related phenomenon of violence and extremism? I don't think that the studies are sufficient, and I'm not saying that as a compliment, but the studies are quality studies, and they are modern, and they set the steps and to build on those studies. There are very few studies. If you look for studies on extremism, you will find that most studies focus on ISIS and jihadist Salafism, and if a person studies political Islam, he would study that from a historical perspective. Things that have become common knowledge from Hassan al-Banna, Sayyid Qutb. What is lacking now is a methodology of research for the movements of these groups. Here in Europe, it's very rare to find that there is a Muslim Brotherhood person who would tell you, I belong to the Muslim Brotherhood group. No, they don't. It's part of the strategy is that they should deny any relationship with the Muslim Brotherhood. They would advocate the war against Muslim Brotherhood while they are occupying higher ranks with the Muslim Brotherhood groups. So we need some methodologies to find the criteria, how to find the members of the Muslim Brotherhood groups, especially for the Western researchers who are still using conventional methodologies. Once they find an institution that introduced itself as not part of the Muslim Brotherhood group, they would say this is it, but they would have very shallow studies. This is why we need methodologies to analyze not only the discourse, but also the ideology, the movement, the funding. And the more we monitor the funding, the more discrete will be the funding. So we will need to understand the funding and its movement. Many questions. I find that there are more questions than answers. And I can say that, honestly, the special researchers in this field, there are not too many, and we need more cooperation to establish methodologies and put them in academic studies to study the latest development of political Islam groups, which are in continuous dynamism. They evolve continuously. Whenever there is a law that passes against them, they will find a way to get out of it. And we need to find how to lock all the escapes for them. Not only lock the escapes, but, and this is important to me, we need to have an alternative so that whoever is interested in Islam, wants to be religious, can find that humanitarian Islam, like Dr. Wael said, the humanitarian Islam, the Islam that share with us the values of humanity. We should not leave Islam on the side, but it is Islam itself, but also it looks at the others from a humanitarian perspective. Thank you very much. At the end, we have what is called here in Ten's research what is called the Ascend Arm of Islamism, which is a series of phenomenon that exist among people who believe in that. Among them, we find the monopoly by the Muslim Brotherhood of the truth and the religion. And Islamism, they have one interpretation of religion, a second isolation of those who belong to it. Number three, looking down on society. Number four, using the slogan of whenever there is interest of the group, there is God. Number five, society shifting to continuous conflict, and society is divided and there are civil wars. Number six, lack of citizenship. Number seven, the idea of loyalty of the individual to the group. Number eight, the principle of considering the others infidel, which justifies violence against them to each power. Number nine, limiting the thinking on topics of doctrine, which leads to a society limited to jurisprudence of the old days. Number 10, mixing religion and politics, which desecrates religion and which leads to a mixture between opinion and interpretation of the sacred text. This sender calls any government or any researchers who respect citizenship and the joint life, like our guest Dr. Mohanad Khurshid, to face that ideology in different ways. This is what we try to do today. Dr. Mohanad Khurshid, in the name of Chance Research Advisory and on behalf of its Executive Director, Mohammed Ali, we thank you very much and hope to have you very soon. Thank you very much.